Welcome back to the Conspiracy Tapes. Our next story begins in Washington, at the White House. It involves a mystery surrounding the death of Bill Clinton's best friend and personal lawyer, Vincent Foster. They buried Foster last July. They've been trying to bury the riddle of his death ever since. Officially, it has been ruled a suicide. But we've spoken to some criminal experts, men trained in examining violent deaths, who think the Foster case is much more sinister. It is a sweltering July day in Washington, D.C. At the White House, Vince Foster, right-hand man and lifelong friend of President Clinton, leaves his office for an appointment with death.
The White House is still in shock tonight after the apparent suicide of Vincent Foster, the deputy White House legal counsel and close personal friend of the Clinton family.
There is really no way to know why these things happen. And it is very important that his life not be judged simply by how it ended, because Vince Foster was a wonderful man.
Foster's body was found in this lonely Civil War stronghold in Virginia. A bullet wound in his head, a gun in his hand. Official verdict, suicide.
I don't think there is anything more to know. His family, his friends, his co-workers. We've been up real late 2 nights in a row now, remembering and crying and laughing and talking about him. I don't think there is anything else.
But nearly a year later, Fort Marcy Park is still haunted by Foster's strange death. We've scoured the Foster death scene, interviewed world experts in mysterious deaths, and searched through hours of news footage.
According to the official story, these are the last things that Foster saw.
Our investigation has revealed massive doubts about the official story. We've uncovered a bizarre tale of crime and conspiracy in high places that could have had Straight Arrow Foster marked for death.
Every professional investigator or policeman that I've talked to who's had anything to do with the Vince Foster case states that they believe it was murder, and not a one of them believe he committed suicide.
Gene Wheaton is a counterterrorism advisor, drug buster, and former Army investigator. On a cold pre-spring day, he retraced the journey which brought the despondent Foster to this remote spot.
The only things we know for sure about Vince Foster's death is that he was dead, and he was shot in the head, and his body was found in this park. The photographs that were released with his right hand clasping the pistol and his thumb through the trigger guard looks staged.
Forget any Whitewater connection to the killing. Whitewater is more like a red herring, according to Wheaton. This out-of-the-way airfield in Mena, Arkansas, and claims of gun running and drug smuggling centered here could be the real key to the riddle of Vince Foster's death.
I think that if Vince Foster was murdered, which there is a good possibility that he was murdered because of the chance of exposing the drugs, guns, covert operations related to Mena, Arkansas, possibly with Vince Foster being an innocent who asked the wrong questions.
So who were the suspected murderers from Mena? Incredible as it seems, Wheaton says they were renegade U.S. intelligence agents who were actually running the illegal operations.
Vince Foster was responsible for receiving all sensitive information about wrongdoings of the intelligence community in the White House. Renegade covert operators are operating outside the law and outside the government. Just whichever faction felt it was threatened would have launched something on its own to kill a man that might threaten their inner circle.
To understand how Vince Foster ended up here, you should know that he started out here in Hope, Arkansas, population 10,000. Foster was a boyhood pal of President-to-be Bill Clinton. Years later, in the Arkansas capital and the nation's capital, the president and his wife Hillary came to rely on the attorney they called the Rock of Gibraltar.
He has had a genuinely outstanding career in the law.
That was Foster's introduction when he addressed graduates at his alma mater just before he died.
This invitation has caused me to stop from this hectic and challenging adventure I am on in Washington To think about the roads I traveled to get there.
The hectic adventure in Washington proved too much. After a series of attacks by the Wall Street Journal, Vince Foster ended it all, according to the official version.
There are far too many unanswered questions.
That's completely
at this
right.
time,
It's completely
at least
right.
in the public record, to
That's-
even begin to call this a suicide.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Former New York Police Detective Arthur Nascarella learned all about murder on the mean streets of the city. 20 years of questioning, cajoling, calling. He knows how a violent death investigation should be conducted and how it shouldn't be conducted.
You had the Park Police come in, see the gun in Mr. Foster's hand, and immediately call it and treat it as a suicide. All right, that is not good police work.
Nascarella, too, scoffs at the official story of suicide.
Very fishy, like a large trout in the trunk of your car for about a week. I personally do not believe that it was a suicide. I believe it was a homicide. It's just too clean. It's perfect. Okay, it's Hollywood. It's not reality.
Nascarella and Wheaton see eye to eye on the holes in the suicide story. Item, the neatness of the crime scene.
There was an amazing lack of blood next to his body.
There was little or no blood found at the scene, which is extremely difficult to understand. If somebody puts a gun in their mouth and pulls the trigger, they blow their brains out. It's not a pretty scene. Okay, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of physical disturbance to the body. I don't have to go into it. You believe me when I tell you. Okay, you are not going to look well.
Item, the gun found in Foster's hand.
In 35 years of conducting homicide investigations, I have yet to find a weapon of the caliber of a .38 caliber pistol or larger still in the victim's hands.
The gun remaining in the hand after the event is not impossible. It's also not impossible that I might hit a Grand Slam home run in the bottom of the 9th inning in this year's World Series, but it's not likely.
Item, the so-called suicide note found torn to pieces in Foster's briefcase almost a week after he died.
How they could say they never found it during the first search of a briefcase is absolutely ludicrous, because you're not searching a warehouse, you're searching a briefcase. All you have to do is turn it upside down and you found everything in it.
No mention of the word suicide on it. No despondency beyond that which related to the work he was doing, the pressures of the office. Nothing about his family, no goodbye. It's not consistent with what goes on.
Item, the inexperienced Park Police investigating the violent death.
If I wanted an investigation to be totally screwed up, I would hire the Park Police to come in and conduct the investigation.
I can't think of another group that would be more incompetent at doing that kind of work except for the Keystone Cops.
Questions and more questions. All of the ingredients of a murder mystery that Wheaton feels can only lead back to the airport at Mena, Arkansas.
I have personally been investigating assassinations of American officers for almost 20 years. These covert operators don't go out and kill KGB agents or Cuban DGI agents. They kill their own.
And if you think nobody could be that ruthless, just wait till you hear from a determined cop who had his own brush with death. That mysterious near-fatal encounter, plus Ollie North, Bill Clinton, and Vince Foster's ghost, still ahead. Secret murder squads, dead-of-night plane flights, drug smuggling. It sounds like a movie, but it's actually one theory behind the death of top Clinton aide Vincent Foster. We take you back to Arkansas now as we continue our investigation of that dirty little secret that some believe may be the real motive for Foster's death.
It's a cover-up all the way from Mena, Arkansas to the White House.
Well, I'm portrayed in some circles within the government as a traitor, and all I tried to do was the right thing.
There was a lot of muddy water in there, claims of CIA activity.
3 men, one thing in common. They asked too many questions about this small Arkansas town while Bill Clinton and Vincent Foster ran the state. Mena, Arkansas, a theater, some schools, a city hall, and an airport. The runway's pretty quiet nowadays, but back in the 1980s, this was allegedly the nerve center of a secret gun-running operation to the Iran-Contra rebels. The hills around Mena would echo with transport planes taking off. Some of the pilots allegedly smuggled drugs back into the United States, despite Washington's war on drugs.
Victory over drugs is our cause.
How much did Bill Clinton, Vince Foster, and other officials know about Mena? Investigator Gene Wheaton.
The guns out, drugs back in, was absolutely going on with the knowledge of certain intelligence types within the U.S. government. When the Mena activities were dumped on the governor's desk, I cannot envision Vince Foster not having been consulted.
Arkansas State Police Officer Russell Welch tried to find out who knew what. It nearly got him fatally poisoned.
I was sick, and it was originally diagnosed as poisoning.
And what was the poison that almost cost him his life?
Military biological agent, grade anthrax.
Anthrax is one of the prime assassination poisons used by the covert operators.
Those covert operators included self-confessed drug runner Barry Seal. He was one of Welch's early targets.
Barry Seal and some of the local people who were working with him were already saying that they were working with the CIA.
Welch soon learned this was no ordinary case.
We were several months into the investigation when other federal officers told me that this case wasn't being handled the same as others. And that's when I took their word for it that something was a little bit different.
And the difference with this particular investigation was?
Well, the intentions in the statements were that the case was being slowed down.
Seal ended up dead, victim of an assassin squad. After his own death scare and other warnings, Welch finally got the message.
Now, in hindsight, dumb me. They were trying to tell me not to investigate, to leave it alone. I just want to get away from it. I don't think it hurt for somebody to take a good long look at it, but as long as it's not me.
At one point, Bill Duncan was taking a good long look at Mena. He was an IRS investigator assigned to find out what was going on there. He has regretted it ever since.
I feel betrayed. I feel like I'm a very patriotic American. I love my state. I love my country. I really did my best. And now I'm basically excluded from a career that I worked very hard to have and that I loved.
Duncan says he resigned in frustration from the IRS after shadowy powers that be stymied his Mena investigation.
There are powerful forces at play here. Something important enough for the Department of Justice and high-level Internal Revenue Service officials to become involved in subterfuge and perjury and subornation of perjury and destruction of documents, of evidence. And it continues. They got away with it.
I never in my wildest dreams or nightmares envisioned that we would end up with criminal charges.
Men like Oliver North, who operated in secrecy, sometimes serve a purpose, Duncan says.
I have no problem with bona fide covert operations. It's not my place. If they become intertwined with illegal activity and it corrupts the judicial process and system in my state and needlessly imperils witnesses who cooperate and allows drug smugglers and money launderers to come into our state through an open door or their perception of an open door, then that's another matter entirely.
You can go out and arrest a guy for having a joint of marijuana, but you can't go arrest, a C-130 loaded with cocaine because it's a government operation.
Airplane technician Terry Capehart says he saw the secret Mena operations firsthand.
I'd be out there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and trying to catch gas thieves, and got to noticing weird, unusual goings and comings of airplanes. People don't think that it can happen in Mena, Arkansas. That was what the problem. Chicago, yes, hey, if it had been Chicago, they'd have believed every word of it. Mena, Arkansas, no. It won't happen here. It can't. But it did.
As Robert Fisk, the special counsel who's been appointed to investigate